The white Walmart semi-truck, with its distinctive blue lettering, rolled through the pre-dawn darkness along Interstate 25 near Albuquerque, New Mexico, carrying what appeared to be another routine shipment of consumer goods destined for retail stores across the Southwest. The truck was one of thousands that moved through America's highways daily, part of the vast logistics network that kept store shelves stocked and customers satisfied with the convenience of modern retail commerce. Behind the wheel sat Eduardo Eddie Vasquez, a 43-year-old veteran truck driver who had been hauling freight for Walmart's logistics division for over 12 years. Eddie was known throughout the Albuquerque distribution center as reliable, professional, and quietly competent, the kind of driver that dispatchers trusted with high-value loads and tight delivery schedules without worrying about complications or delays. But on the morning of June 8, 2024, Eddie was carrying far more than legitimate retail merchandise. Hidden inside sealed pallets marked as high-value electronics were vacuum-packed bundles containing $19.5 million in drug money, proceeds from Sinaloa cartel operations that had been systematically funneled through Walmart's trusted logistics network in one of the most sophisticated money laundering schemes federal investigators had ever encountered. By evening, both Eddie and the money had vanished without a trace, triggering a federal manhunt that continues to this day and exposing a criminal operation that had been exploiting America's retail supply chain to move hundreds of millions of dollars in drug proceeds while hiding behind the legitimacy of the world's largest retailer. The discovery of the theft began when Eddie failed to complete his scheduled delivery route to distribution centers in Phoenix and Las Vegas. When he didn't respond to radio calls or arrive at his first scheduled stop, Walmart's Transportation Security Department initiated standard procedures for tracking overdue drivers and potentially stolen vehicles. GPS tracking data showed that Eddie's truck had deviated from its assigned route near the Arizona border, making unexplained stops at locations that weren't part of his delivery schedule before the tracking signal went dark completely. When authorities located the abandoned truck 12 hours later in a remote area outside Flagstaff, Arizona, they discovered that the trailer's cargo had been systematically looted, with specific pallets missing while others remained untouched. The selective nature of the theft immediately raised suspicions among investigators who understood that random cargo thieves would typically steal whatever was most valuable or easiest to transport. The fact that Eddie had targeted specific pallets while leaving expensive electronics and other merchandise behind suggested inside knowledge about which shipments contained something far more valuable than routine retail goods. Federal agents who examined the abandoned truck found evidence of sophisticated criminal planning that went far beyond opportunistic cargo theft. The trailer's locking mechanism had been defeated using professional tools. The remaining cargo showed signs of careful searching rather than random ransacking, and the truck's location suggested knowledge of remote areas where criminal activity could occur without detection by law enforcement patrols. But the most shocking discovery came when FBI financial crime specialists analyzed shipping records and discovered that the missing pallets contained not legitimate Walmart merchandise, but $19.5 million in cash proceeds from drug operations that had been disguised as routine retail shipments moving through the company's interstate logistics network. The money had been packaged inside fake electronics boxes with proper documentation, tracking codes, and security seals that made them virtually indistinguishable from legitimate high-value merchandise. The sophistication of the concealment operation indicated coordination between criminal organizations and corrupted employees within Walmart's supply chain who possessed detailed knowledge of shipping procedures, security protocols, and quality control systems. Eduardo Vasquez had built his reputation over 12 years as exactly the kind of employee that made Walmart's logistics operations successful: reliable, honest, and competent enough to handle the most challenging assignments without requiring additional supervision or creating problems for management. Born and raised in Albuquerque's West Side, Eddie had started working for Walmart immediately after obtaining his commercial driver's license at age 24. His employment record was exemplary, showing consistent on-time performance, zero accidents, no customer complaints, and the kind of steady competence that earned him assignments for high-value shipments requiring special handling and security procedures. Eddie had driven millions of miles for Walmart without incident, transporting everything from electronics to pharmaceuticals across routes that covered the entire southwestern United States. Co-workers at the Albuquerque distribution center knew Eddie as quiet and professional, someone who arrived early for shifts, maintained his equipment meticulously, and completed assignments without drama or complications. He lived alone in a modest house in Albuquerque's South Valley, drove a well-maintained pickup truck when not working, and seemed to embody the steady work ethic that characterized many long-term Walmart employees. Eddie was the last guy you'd suspect of something like this, said Maria Rodriguez, a dispatcher who had worked with Eddie for 8 years. He never missed deliveries, never complained about assignments, never caused problems. When you needed someone reliable for a difficult route or valuable cargo, Eddie was always your first choice. Nobody saw this coming, but federal investigators would discover that Eddie's apparently stable life had been concealing mounting financial pressures that had made him vulnerable to criminal recruitment. His elderly mother required expensive medical care for diabetes complications that weren't fully covered by insurance. His ex-wife was pursuing increased child support payments that would consume most of his remaining income. And credit card debts had been accumulating for over 2 years as Eddie struggled to maintain his household while supporting family members. Bank records examined by federal agents showed that Eddie's financial situation had improved dramatically in the months before his disappearance, with cash deposits, expensive purchases, and lifestyle improvements that were inconsistent with his Walmart salary. Eddie had bought a new motorcycle, paid off credit card debts, and made substantial home improvements that suggested access to significant unreported income. The investigation revealed that Eddie had been systematically recruited by criminal operatives who had identified him as a valuable transportation asset with access to high-security shipping routes and detailed knowledge of Walmart's logistics procedures. The recruitment process had been gradual and professional, beginning with seemingly legitimate opportunities for additional income and evolving into full participation in money laundering operations. Eddie's criminal activities had been facilitated by his legitimate access to shipping manifests, delivery schedules, and route planning systems that allowed him to identify which shipments contained cash rather than legitimate merchandise. His 12 years of experience had given him detailed understanding of Walmart's security protocols, quality control procedures, and management oversight systems that he used to avoid detection while transporting criminal proceeds. The heist itself demonstrated sophisticated criminal planning that required months of preparation and detailed coordination with criminal operatives at multiple locations. Eddie had developed techniques for bypassing GPS tracking systems by creating false reports of road closures, mechanical problems, and other legitimate reasons for route deviations that wouldn't immediately trigger security alerts. Using handheld GPS jammers and signal manipulation devices purchased through online vendors, Eddie had created temporary blackout periods during which his truck's location couldn't be tracked by Walmart's transportation management systems. These blackouts coincided with prearranged meetings where Eddie transferred cash-containing pallets to other vehicles before continuing his legitimate delivery routes. Surveillance footage from truck stops and rest areas along Eddie's regular routes provided federal investigators with crucial evidence of his criminal activities over the previous 6 months. The footage showed Eddie meeting with unidentified individuals at predetermined locations, transferring unmarked boxes and pallets between vehicles, and receiving payments in cash that he concealed before returning to his legitimate delivery duties. The meetings followed consistent patterns that indicated professional criminal coordination rather than opportunistic theft. Eddie would arrive at specific locations during predetermined time windows, complete transfers efficiently and discreetly, and resume normal delivery activities without creating obvious signs of criminal activity that might attract attention from other drivers or law enforcement personnel. The sophistication of Eddie's criminal operation required coordination with cartel operatives who understood both Walmart's logistics systems and federal law enforcement tracking methods well enough to avoid detection for extended periods. The operation had been moving an estimated $50 million annually through Walmart's shipping network while maintaining the appearance of routine retail commerce. FBI Special Agent Michael Torres assumed lead responsibility for the investigation when federal agencies discovered connections between Eddie's theft and broader Sinaloa cartel money laundering operations that had been under surveillance for over 2 years. The case represented an opportunity to investigate not just individual theft, but systematic criminal exploitation of America's retail supply chain infrastructure. This wasn't simple cargo theft or employee fraud, Agent Torres explained during a press briefing. We're dealing with a sophisticated money laundering operation that exploited one of America's most trusted retail brands to move drug proceeds across multiple states. The level of coordination and inside knowledge required suggests a criminal network with extensive resources and planning capabilities. The FBI's investigation quickly expanded beyond Eddie's individual crimes to include comprehensive examination of Walmart's logistics security, employee screening procedures, and oversight systems that had been exploited by criminal organizations. Federal agents discovered evidence of additional corrupted employees, compromised shipping procedures, and systematic vulnerabilities that had allowed criminal organizations to operate undetected within Walmart's supply chain. The investigation revealed that the criminal network had been operating for over 4 years, using various retail companies' logistics systems to transport cash while avoiding the enhanced scrutiny that traditional money laundering methods typically attract from law enforcement agencies. Walmart's extensive interstate shipping network had been particularly valuable because the company's reputation for legitimate commerce provided perfect cover for criminal transportation activities. Federal agents coordinated with Walmart's corporate security department to analyze shipping records, employee backgrounds, and operational procedures that might have been exploited by criminal organizations. The analysis revealed systematic patterns of suspicious activity that had gone undetected by routine security monitoring systems designed to identify traditional cargo theft rather than sophisticated money laundering operations. The manhunt for Eddie intensified when federal agents discovered evidence that he had fled immediately after the theft with resources and assistance that suggested criminal organization support. Bank records showed that Eddie had systematically liquidated his assets in the weeks before his disappearance, converting property and investments into cash that wouldn't leave electronic trails for law enforcement agencies to follow. Intelligence reports suggest that Eddie may have crossed into Mexico within hours of abandoning his truck, using false documentation and transportation networks provided by the same criminal organization whose money he had stolen. The speed and efficiency of his disappearance indicated professional-level escape planning that exceeded what individual criminals typically possess without organizational assistance. Mexican law enforcement agencies were immediately notified of Eddie's fugitive status and provided with detailed information about his background, possible destinations, and potential criminal associates who might assist his continued flight from American authorities. But the practical challenges of locating individual fugitives in Mexico's vast territories, combined with Eddie's apparent access to substantial financial resources, made immediate apprehension unlikely. The $19.5 million that Eddie stole provides sufficient resources to remain hidden indefinitely while funding sophisticated efforts to avoid detection by law enforcement agencies operating with limited budgets and jurisdictional constraints. The money could be used to purchase high-quality false identification, establish legitimate business operations that provide cover for his new identity, or support modest lifestyle in remote areas where American fugitives can blend into expatriate communities. Federal agents warn that Eddie should be considered armed and potentially dangerous, possibly traveling under false identities obtained through criminal networks specializing in documentation fraud for fugitives and criminal operatives. His transformation from trusted truck driver to international fugitive demonstrates the kind of character change that can make individuals unpredictable when facing capture or confrontation with law enforcement. The public reaction to Eddie's theft reflected broader concerns about the security of retail supply chains that Americans had trusted implicitly without understanding their vulnerabilities to criminal exploitation. Walmart's statement emphasizing full cooperation with authorities did little to calm public anxiety about how criminal organizations might be using familiar commercial systems for illegal purposes. It feels like something out of a Netflix series, said Patricia Gonzalez, an Albuquerque resident who frequently shops at stores supplied by the distribution center where Eddie worked. You never think about how your groceries and merchandise get to the store, or who might be handling them along the way. It makes you wonder what else might be going on behind the scenes of all these everyday services. The investigation continues with federal agencies monitoring border crossings, financial institutions, and criminal networks that might be assisting Eddie's continued flight from justice. The FBI maintains a $300,000 reward for information leading to his arrest, reflecting both the seriousness of the charges and the broader implications of his case for retail security and organized crime prevention. Eduardo Eddie Vasquez, last seen June 8, 2024. $19.5 million still missing. FBI reward active. Case remains open.